Quarantine procedures now.
Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2005 sci-fi horror flick Doom, which is a loose adaptation of the popular video game of the same name, directed by Ondrej Bartkowiak, starring Karl Urban, Rosamund Pike, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The film essentially follows a group of Marines who have been sent on a rescue mission to a research facility located on Mars, where communications have suddenly ceased. In the beginning, it's explained that the year 2026 saw archaeologists who had been working in the Nevada desert inadvertently discover a portal to an ancient city on Mars, which they had named the Ark. Using this as a means of instantaneous transportation, the Union Aerospace Corporation began setting up the Olduvai Research Facility, which was then used to uncover more about the lost civilization that had once thrived there. 20 years on, we're told that the scientists were still struggling to comprehend why the Ark had been built and what happened to the civilization that built it in the first place. Many of the scientists and workers are then seen fleeing from something that begins taking them out one by one. The lead scientist, Dr. McCormack, who headed the Classified Genetic Research Department, is able to momentarily lock himself in one of the offices, giving him a few seconds to send out an SOS. The scientist explains that they had a level 5 breach and insists that the company begin implementing quarantine procedures immediately. Unfortunately for McCormack, the door is then breached by a large figure, indicating that he was also about to meet his doom. Wanting to contain the incident, Union Aerospace immediately contact the Special Ops team led by Sergeant Mahonen, and it's here that we find out that there were still a few scientists and company employees on the other side of the Ark. Their priorities are also clearly laid out, with an order to assess any possible threats, retrieve company property, and maintain the quarantine protocols by not allowing anyone through the Ark after they arrive. We get a brief introduction to Sarge's team, who were essentially on holiday and not expecting any missions. I couldn't help but feel that this part was rushed and didn't really give us anything other than superficial cliches. I mean, we get a guy who likes playing video games, a religious person who doesn't like it when people swear, the inexperienced kid on his first day, the sexual deviant with a proclivity for being offensive, and a few other minor characters. The only person in the team that is fleshed out is John Grimm, jokingly named Reaper, understandably so considering that he is the lead character. While his whole team is enjoying their downtime, Grimm is cleaning out his rifle, which gives us an indication of his mindset, and that he is extremely focused and always prepared. Reaper is recommended to stay behind as his twin sister Samantha was one of the main scientists working on Olduvai, but he ignores the request and joins his team as they travel through the Ark. Now, the Ark essentially functions as a wormhole between 2 points in space, allowing matter to travel from one established point to another. Interestingly, when the team arrive through the Ark, they are met by a man named Pinky, who explains that their first few experiences with the mode of transportation were mildly unpredictable, as is demonstrated with a glimpse of what had happened to him, as the top half of his body made it to Mars, but both his legs wound up in another galaxy. This coincidentally indicated that there were other Ark locations that could potentially be travelled to, though this concept isn't explored further in the film. The team meet Grimm's sister Samantha, who explains she will be accompanying the group, which would enable her to recover valuable data for the company. She also informs them that the facility focused on 3 fields of research, including archaeology, where she personally worked in, genetics, and weaponry. She then plays them a chilling recording they had captured, featuring the screams of trapped employees who were in the quarantined section they were about to enter. The Special Ops team then splits up into smaller groups with their own objectives, without realizing that they were being watched by a creature that is yet to be seen. Portman and Goat make it through the genetics lab, where they see that the scientists had been performing some questionable experiments. They also find an electrified holding cell, indicating that the scientists had either planned on keeping something contained, or had once contained something that had managed to escape. The hilarious Duke and Sarge make it to one of the weapons development rooms, giving a curious Mahonen a brief glimpse of schematics to the infamous BFG gun from the games, which I have to admit got me pretty excited. While going through the records kept in the room, he also reveals that the Grimms lost their parents in an accident to this very facility during an archaeological dig when they were kids. Reaper and Samantha begin to bond, having not seen each other for 10 years, and Sam informs him that they had been finding ancient humanoid remains from the reopened dig where their parents had died. After analysing samples gathered from the fossils, her team had discovered that some of the humanoids harboured 24 pairs of chromosomes, one more pair than both humans and also the rest of their kin. This extra pair is also hypothesized as being responsible for what she believed gave those particular fossils superhuman abilities, making them stronger and smarter than the rest of their species. Samantha reasons this by explaining that their cells actually healed 50 times faster than us, allowing their species to recover from injuries almost instantly. Based on the information they had gathered, the team was also unable to find any genetic disorders, viruses, or cancers in these samples. And due to the fact that this extra pair of chromosomes was not found in all their samples, she reasoned that this extra chromosome was likely to have been bioengineered, indicating that the humanoid species which had developed the Ark had also been on the verge of curing all illnesses. The team regroup in pursuit of a mysterious figure, who they soon realize is a traumatized Dr. McCormack, seen clutching one of his colleagues' arms. The crazed scientist then rips off his own ear, giving a brief look at the horror they are about to encounter. They take the raving man into a medical room where he tells them that something was now inside, repeatedly insisting that they shut the facility down. As the special ops team continue through the building, they begin to realize that the rest of the scientists that were sealed off in this section were either dead or had completely lost their minds, with minor signs of genetic mutation, indicating that a virus or infection was responsible. This theory is then solidified when Samantha takes a sample of Dr. McCormack's blood, noting that he had been infected by something that had begun altering his genetic makeup. Following a creature that leads them into the sewers, Goat is attacked by one of the monsters, which bites the man and begins infecting him before coming under fire and running away prior to getting taken out by Reaper. After the apparent death of Goat, Mahonen furiously demands that Samantha explain what is happening, revealing the body of one of the creatures they had bagged. Dr. Grimm attempts a biopsy of the creature with the aid of Duke, where she discovers that the thing in front of them was actually one of the scientists who had genetically mutated almost beyond recognition. The majority of the remaining employees are then evacuated from the facility via the Ark, while the team investigate the archaeological site. We lose a few members of the group before the Sarge uses the newly acquired BFG to kill one of the creatures that had just taken out Portman. Furious at the loss of 4 of his men, Mahonen demands that Sam reveals the truth about what they were doing here, forcing her to show them the data she had been tasked with collecting. Much to her surprise, she then discovers that Dr. McCormack, who headed up the genetics team, had actually begun administering the C24 compound, which featured the extra chromosome, into a human test subject. The man was essentially a convicted killer who was then forced to suffer a painful live genetic augmentation, causing massive mutations which turned him into a diabolical monster. Confused as to why the virus seemed to have 2 different adverse effects, leaving her fossilized samples in perfect health, while so many of the people here had instead turned into monsters, Dr. Grimm theorizes that the virus was choosing its victims. She then uses a piece of infected brain tissue to prove a point, introducing Portman's blood, which causes the brain tissue to violently gravitate towards it, while Destroyer's blood had no visible effect. Dr. Grimm then surmises that the virus itself was picking up and favouring the genetic markers it was finding for violent and psychotic behaviour within its hosts. They all immediately head back to the Ark to find that the original host of the virus had already gone through and laid waste to the facility back on Earth. The Sarge takes a turn for the worst and begins mercilessly killing all the employees before he's met by the Grimms, who attempt to explain that not all the employees were infected or were even capable of being infected. Their pleas, however, are completely ignored by a fuming Mahonen, who even goes to the extent of killing one of his own men who refused to execute a group of civilians. The group are then besieged by a horde of infected, which kill the rest of the team, before taking the Sarge, leaving the injured Reaper and Samantha to barely escape. Samantha then offers to inject Reaper with a sample of C24 to save her brother who was bleeding to death. Although Reaper is concerned about the adverse consequences, fearing that he might turn and become a threat to Samantha, his sister gives him the synthetic compound, insisting that she knew he was free of any evil traits. This leads to the best part of the film, as Grimm wakes up to find that his wounds have completely healed. We then get a hilarious first-person view, simulating the dynamics found in the game, as the Doomslayer takes out the infected before encountering the now mutated Sarge in the final boss battle. As a game-to-film adaptation, Doom isn't bad, though I have to admit much of the lore from the game is missing in the final product, like the origin of the Doomslayer, and the creatures he was slaying, which were actually demons from hell. This is only slightly addressed with the virus's proclivity for creating monsters, but I think if they stuck closer to the source material, it would have made the overall story arc a bit more coherent. Both Rosamund Pike and Karl Urban help give the film an emotional centre and anchor us to the plot, which is no surprise given they're the only 2 characters that were given enough time to care about. I love The Rock in every other film that he starred in, but couldn't help but feel that he was miscast as the Sarge. Ironically, he was originally asked to play Reaper, which he turned down in favour of the Sarge. Probably a good thing though, since Karl Urban, as always, is one of the better things about this film. I have to be first to admit the set design in this film is fantastic, recreating the game-like aesthetic which made Doom so awesome to play. Doom is an ambitious effort by Ondrej Bartkowiak, borrowing elements from both Predator and Resident Evil, and is a must-see film for fans of the BFG. Well, that's all for today, folks. Thanks to all of you guys who requested we take a look at Doom. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. And if there's any other stuff you'd like me to check out, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
Sam! Sam, why didn't you answer your comm? We gotta go now!
Why did they take Goat and not Destroyer? Why Carmack and not Dr. Thurman?
What?
This is from Destroyer. It's choosing, John. It's choosing who to infect. Latching onto numbers in the DNA code linked...
Linked to what? Evil?